We have a new problem. Fresh from the oven and hot as hell. Scott Lynch, The Lies of Locke Lamora. You're listening to AMI Audiobook Review. I'm Jacob Shamansky. Today, another coworker of ours is going to be joining us for Rapid Fire Review. Producer Matt Agnew is going to be in the second half for that. But right now, Rams, we're going to be doing something that's a little different. We're calling it solo reviews. We read quite a few titles that we never get to bring up on this show, and we're giving ourselves this opportunity to share our thoughts on some books that we think deserve the attention.
Agreed.
What's up, Rams?
Yes, exactly. A while back on Audiobook Review, I reviewed Malcolm X, autobiography of Malcolm X, and it was
right.
It was just a casual review, but I apparently spent a couple more minutes than I thought reviewing that, and they were like, we should do this more often. So now we're doing it formally. It's
when you think about your thoughts on a book, it just prompts more pondering about that same book. When you start thinking about a book, it becomes an endless spiral, and you realize how much this book has impacted you only once you actually unpack it yourself.
And sometimes, like, as a book is fresh for me, coming out of reading a book, I find it even difficult to move on to another book so quickly. Like, I need some time to digest, to really let the impact go through me. And I'm even going through that right now, but we'll talk about that book later. But, you know, with some of these books, similar to TV shows, I guess, right? Like, you feel very invested, or you feel very tied in, and you really do have to unravel yourself also. So I find that talking about books on this show or with people or during book club sessions helps in that aspect also.
And I think that's the beauty of book clubs, because they help you unravel the complexities of books that you might not have initially picked up on. And then in turn, that makes you a better reader for the next books that you pick up, because you're actually looking out for things you can bring up to other members of the book club, or whoever you end up talking to your book about with. But for these solo reviews, I think our goal here is we do a lot of curation on this show. So this is, yes, it's a very self-serving review because we read and love these books and we just want to talk about them. But also we both, I mean, you can confirm with me, Ramya, but we both loved the selections that we're presenting here today. So these are heartfelt recommendations from us to you.
Exactly. So the book that I want to review is one that I may have casually mentioned on this show, but definitely did not get into a review. It's one that I finished over a weekend, and the recommendation itself was funny. But first I'll give you the title and we'll get into it because you might have heard of it. It's called Normal People by Sally Rooney, and it was published in 2018. You heard of it, Jacob?
Yes, and it's big on TikTok too. This is one of those things I see blasted everywhere on TikTok. Yeah,
it's blasted everywhere on TikTok, all right? Now, I don't know at which point I found it on TikTok or I got the recommendation, but legit, no joke. I go on TikTok in between reads, and this content creator just holds up this book and he's like, I read this and you must read it. It has changed my entire life. I mean, I can't even look at people the same way after reading this book. Just go pick it up. It was the shortest, most vague recommendation, and I went straight to Audible and downloaded the book and read it. And it was so beautiful. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're susceptible to good, charismatic
I have problems,
book review. Book
especially if I'm in the in the state of, I don't know what to read next. Help me. Maybe I'll go to a real person, but if obviously a TikTok video finds me first, then dibs, right?
First of all, is this a nonfiction or is it
no?
Okay,
it's a fiction. It's a romance. It's storytelling. Yeah. There's a lot of just getting to know people.
So where do you even begin with the book?
Okay.
Like this? Like why did it hit you the way that it did?
Truly, this book was, like I said, I finished it over a weekend because it is the type of book you can finish over a weekend. Not so long. A lot of character development and character bonding over adventure or plot driving or depth of story. You're really starting to understand characters as they grow, right? So this book kind of takes place in a 10-ish year time frame. Kids who meet at high school and then following their journey through college, through even some of their married life, and then into their real adulthood and where they fall in each other's lives at that point. So that's what you're doing. You're just following these two characters and then all the little things beyond that. But it's drama. And you do get a sense of adventure because you're following these two characters around, but you're not following them around to then go into their solo lives. They're always coming back and connecting. So they're separating and coming back and connecting. Now, if you want, I can read you the synopsis of this book so you get an understanding of...
I think that would be really helpful.
Yes.
I'm still a bit unclear on what this book is about,
Exactly.
but I know that sometimes books are like that.
They are like
They're
that.
just kind of hard to describe.
They're
But
hard to
Let's see if
describe.
the synopsis helps.
They're hard to describe, and what I find with this book is you're really focusing on the people. So you have to understand that in order to pick up the book. But here is the synopsis. At school, Connell and Marianne pretend not to know each other. He's popular and well-adjusted, star of the school soccer team, while she is lonely, proud, and intensely private. But when Connell comes to pick his mother up from her housekeeping job at Marianne's house, a strange and indelible connection grows between the two teenagers. One they're determined to conceal. A year later, they're both studying at Trinity College in Dublin. Marianne has found her feet in a new social world, while Connell hangs at the sidelines, shy and uncertain. Throughout their years in college, Marianne and Connell circle one another, straying towards other people and possibilities, but also always magnetically, irresistibly drawn back together. Then, as she fears into self-destruction and he begins to search for meaning elsewhere, each must confront how far they're willing to go to save the other. Sally Rooney brings her brilliant psychological acuity and perfectly spare prose to a story that explores the subtleties of class, the electricity of first love, and the complex entanglement of family and friendship.
The 10-year span that this book takes place in, how is that handled, and like what's the purpose of making it happen over a period of time like that?
So I think for me, the purpose hit in the way that you get the first love of teenagers, right? You get that initial phase where she's talking about Connell and Marianne are seeing one another behind everyone's back. There's a class issue here. Her mother is the housekeeper. His mother's the housekeeper. Her family's rich. And at school, obviously, they have huge discrepancies in where they fall in the social circles. But then over time, and the way that Sally Rooney writes this, by the way, it's in snippets. Like you get little reels of their lives, not like day by day by day by day. You're not following them forever. You're following them at some point. The chapter will end. High school's over. Now we're following Marianne in college. You really do get it that way. And then now Marianne's married to another guy. And you're like, wait, what? What happened? And then she ties you back in for the summer we missed or the winter we missed.
It's like episodic, but you're skipping episodes.
Yes. And you're not necessarily skipping, but she says, you get what they're going through now, right? Now let's move on. Let's move forward to the next phase where they come back into each other's lives. So you get points where they're no longer together. They've been severed. And then the next chapter will start a year later or 2 years later where they're coming back together again. They've met in the town where they grew up again. Or she's divorced and at a grocery store and runs into him who's married still, to his wife. But something happens between them. So it's like that gorgeous entanglement in the different stages and phases of life where you can tell that they're changing. But we're not always following the changes as they happen. We understand them as we're understanding them or as Rooney brings it to our attention. So Marianne, for example, her character really stuck with me, Jacob, because she started, what was it described as? Proud, lonely, intensely private, right? That's where she started in high school. But in college, my girl was popping. Like by the time Connell meets her in college, he's the strange, awkward one because he had his boost in high school, his peak, right? Then he comes to college and he's like, I don't know where I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am anymore. Why am I even here? And she's like, makeup and dressed up and friends from everywhere, and her boyfriend is like the popular kid, and she's just like, she carries herself like she's the glue of her social circles and all this stuff. So we follow how she got there, and then how she still brings Connell back in because of the history that they share together. And there's a lot of like betrayal and pain and hurt that these characters cause for one another that get explored as well, right? Because what we're seeing in the synopsis is the gist of their relationship, of their dynamics switching, changing, evolving. But underneath all that, there's a lot of pain and hurt that they either address or don't address because they're like, no matter what, I still love you because I've known you.
So is the central axis of this book their dynamic over time, or is it their individual stories and how they just happen to intertwine once in a while?
Absolutely the former.
The former, okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, their stories are interweaved, interconnected, and the point, I would say, if there was a point, is that they separate and they have individual lives in between, but they always come back together. I'm going to read you a quote so you can get a better picture of like how this book, that aspect of this book hit me, because I think this quote depicts it. This is from the perspective of Marianne. She closes her eyes. He probably won't come back, she thinks, or he will, differently. What they have now, they can never get back again. But for her, the pain of loneliness will be nothing compared to the pain she used to feel of being unworthy. He brought her goodness like a gift, and now it belongs to her. Meanwhile, his life opens up behind him in all directions at once. They've done a lot of good for each other. Really, she thinks. Really, people can change each other. You should go, she says. I'll always be here. You know that. So this is near the end of the book. This quote comes up, and I think it's basically perfect for what the book encompasses, which is that the yin and yang, the ups and downs of their dynamic, and lots, like, we didn't get to all the parts where they were separate from each other, but there were lots and lots of moments where they were separate from each other throughout this time frame that we're reading the book. And still, what it comes down to is she's like, you can go again, but I'll always be here and you'll probably come back.
It's kind of like you're an individual, like you can do what you want, but I just want you to know that I'll be here.
What do you think of that, though?
I'll be here.
In a dynamic? Because, I mean, when you think about like the title of this book, Normal People, right? And then you consider that so many of us, the norm is still the courtship, or like the dating, then the serious courtship, then the locking in.
Courtship.
I know. And then the locking in to like partnership, right? Or marriage. But then you think of how these two may have carried out and still in full adulthood are like, go, you do your thing.
Well, I think when it comes to relationships like that, and if I'm understanding correctly, what this book is trying to do is to show us that relationships are not that simple. It's not as simple as meet, get to know each other, romance, courtship, link together, marriage, live together forever. You know, it's bumpy, and sometimes you push away from each other and then get back together, and you're in different places in life. And the passage of time in this book, I go back to this again because it seems like it's not, the point isn't that these characters change. It's the way that these characters react to each other's changes over time and how their dynamic evolves. Am I understanding this right?
Yes.
Because this seems kind of a heady book in terms of like the presentation and the way the story is packaged. Like this seems very unique.
Yes, and I agree with you. I think that is what makes it brilliant. You're not getting so much, like, both of these characters are so deep, right? And I'm talking about like the way when I say deep, even, I mean that they deeply love one another. And you know that very annoying phrase, when you love someone, let them go? Ugh, I hate it. But that phrase is so poignant here because that's what they do often and redundantly. Like, they over and over again let each other go.
Why? Why do they let each other go?
Oh, it's so sad. I don't know. They have to, I think. I think that they can really, you know how you say it's very heady? Like, they can really understand what the other person is going through that that person may not even understand that they're going through. And they are able to then say, I'm not what you need right now. Or this version of me is not helpful to you right now. Or the opposite, I am sabotaging you because of what I'm going through right now, and I will let you go.
I can tell that this book got you thinking. The guy who held the book up in that one TikTok that you saw and said you need to read this book because it'll change your life.
Yeah.
Did this change your life? Like, personally, how did this affect you?
I think so. I think because the way that this author, Sally Rooney, explores these characters and deliberately goes from, like, first love, how sweet, to she is self-destructive and he can't be there for her. Or even though they love each other, there's so much more out there that he's exploring. What is she going to do about that? Like, there's so many things that she brings up thematically that I think she does brilliantly. And yes, you can go deep and have your own analysis like we're doing right now and I've done in the past few months after reading this book. But also, you could just read it for what it is. This gorgeous, beautiful, sad story. And still feel impacted, I think, because the writing was so beautiful. This is her second book, by the way. Sally Rooney wrote another book before this one, which wasn't as popular, didn't get as big. That one is called... Hold up. Conversations with Friends. And it was published in 2017, so a year before this one. And that one explores themes of friendship, love, and power dynamics between two college students, I guess friends, in Dublin. And that one was good, but then this one got, obviously, international acclaim. It was shortlisted for Booker. And then because of this one, people went back and read the other one, and that one got brilliant reviews as well.
Do you think they're going to make a movie out of it?
Out of this one?
Mm-hmm.
It'd make a great movie.
Does it seem like one of those books that just feels like a script?
Yeah.
It's just begging to be made into a movie.
At least a stage play, man. Come on. Like, it's so good.
So, 5 out of 5?
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5 for Normal People by Sally Rooney.
Mm-hmm. What's your book?
Perfect. I'm actually cheating. And I'm reviewing a trilogy.
He didn't tell me, by the way. He didn't even tell me the title of what he was going to review. I have no idea.
This is the Liveship Traders series by Robin Hobb, a book that completely dominated my February and March of this year. I think I'm going to start by just telling you what you ought to know if you're going to pick it up. And then I'm going to get into my opinions on this. Mm-hmm. First of all, it's a trilogy. The first book is Ship of Magic, then Mad Ship, and then Ship of Destiny. Don't get fooled. These are dumb, childish sounding titles, but this is an adult fantasy. Like, it's a complex book, and I wish Robin Hobb chose better titles because it's kind of embarrassing to say, what are you reading? Oh, Ship of Destiny. It just sounds so infantilizing. Oh, it sounds kind of cute. Yeah, it's true. No, but this is a heavily character-driven fantasy series about the downward spiral of a respected trading family. At its heart, it's a family drama set in like a seafaring setting. It's told from multiple points of view, lots of point of views actually. 5 from characters that are within the family and 4 from outside of the family. So it's 9 points of views, but 4 of those I would say are like the main characters you get most of the point of views for. And another thing that's kind of crazy about it is that the point of view changes often. Like most of the times when you're going to see a book with multiple points of view, it's going to be one chapter, one point of view. Here, sometimes it changes like after 3 paragraphs, like that often. And it's a little disorienting at first, but the way she uses it is there's a reason behind it. And it's about showing everybody's perspective. And that's the beauty of multiple point of views. You understand where everybody comes from. And there's basically no important character that doesn't have their own point of view. So like nobody is mysterious, if that sounds weird. Like you understand every single character.
There's a word
very
for this,
well.
Right? Yeah. This type of writing style where everybody gives you everything. Like you're not left in the dark. Okay.
Some characters are often, not in this book, but just in general, some characters are written to be enigmas. And that's kind of their mystique, is that you don't really understand them. This is a long series. Each book is give or take 30 hours of audiobook listening. So that's about 90 hours altogether.
Wow.
It's relatively slow in pace, but it's not a slow burn. I wouldn't describe it like that because the characters are immediately captivating. And like the start of this book it gets off to a good start, I would argue. It leans really hard on its setting of seafaring. Like about 75% of it takes place on ships. So if that's not your thing, I wouldn't recommend this for you. But it's like so much takes place on ships.
Wait, how often do you consider that when you're picking up because you're a fantasy head? So like, do you ever go through that part first? Like, wait, tell me what the setting is before I jump into this.
Fantasy fans are obsessed with classifying everything. I like, oh, this is an adventure fantasy. Oh, this is a coming of age fantasy.
Okay.
Oh, this is a military fantasy. Oh, this is a naval fantasy. This is absolutely a naval fantasy. It's so much of it is about ships and everything.
Interesting. Okay. So you're not going to go in not knowing.
Yes, exactly. And just to continue with things you really ought to know if you're going to read this book, she writes beautifully. Robin Hobb is an amazing writer. Just has a way of writing things that makes mundane things seem interesting. And, You're also in good hands. The plot is like, it's just 3 books, but it's very tightly plotted. And it's a long series, but it doesn't feel like there's any fluff. Nothing is left loose at the end. And the ending is very satisfying. It's kind of hard to give a summary of the plot without getting into spoilers, and the one like synopsis that I saw online is a bit like complex and goes through like every character, so I kind of condensed it. So here's my best effort at doing that, giving you a synopsis that's plot free and relatively short.
Okay.
The Vestrid family falls upon hard times. Like most of the other famous traders in Bingtown, the bustling trading hub of the coast, pirates, bad fortune, political scheming, and foreign interference has all but drained the Vestrid's coffers and way of life. As a result, the family is split, both geographically and in opinion as to how to proceed in order to survive. They must navigate the political waters of Bingtown politics, as well as the treacherous waters of the sea to save their way of life. Does that give you a decent idea? Do you have any questions?
I want you to read it again. What? I don't know if it's because I just never read books like this. I'm thinking I'm supposed to pick up a book after hearing this as the synopsis. Like if this was the first and only thing you had of the book.
Okay. Okay. The thing is, it follows the Vestrid family, but ultimately it's a lot of individual stories of those family members. Right. So it's not one of these things where it uses multiple points of view to tell one story. It's kind of like multiple stories that converge near the end, if that makes sense. Like all these characters are connected, but it's not to the point of telling this like one overarching story. Ultimately it's about individual characters here. They just all happen to be within the same family. Of course, yeah, it's still very highly story driven,
and plot driven.
And plot driven, but the characters are awesome. And the thing that's cool is that I said there were 4 main characters, but these 4 main characters all have very unique themes to their stories. So it's not the same story being told 4 times. They all have very unique journeys. And another thing about the family is it's 3 generations, right? There's like a grandmother that goes all the way down to like her grandchildren, and they all have their own goals and aspirations. and ways I think they should proceed and get thrown into very different situations and have a lot of different fortunes. I want to touch on a couple of them and how their stories explore certain themes.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious, not just about the themes, but about like the arc of the plot. Like you said, going back to the author and her writing style, you said she will even make mundane things sound excellent, right? Or interesting.
Exactly. And that's why it's so hard to describe the plot of the story.
Yep.
Basically, the Vestrid family comes to hard times. They become really poor. Their ship gets stolen. They don't have any money. Their town gets politically ruined, and they need to save themselves and also like try to save their town to continue like the trading way of life. That's my best effort at trying to explain the plot to you.
All right. It's decent.
Okay.
I mean,
because like I said, it's about the individual characters' stories. I think that
deeper than that, I think it's about you knowing the author already. Like knowing that she's going to do an excellent job because you know she's an excellent writer.
And this is why I think it's helpful to listen to reviews before reading a book so you kind of know what you're getting into.
Yep.
I've read Robin Hobb before this, and I know that she's a very deliberate writer, and she doesn't write towards nothing. Like she's
and you would not know that just based on the synopsis. Like there's some things where synopsis just won't do it.
That synopsis seems like it doesn't have a lot of driving force.
Yeah.
But the thing is, this is all very character driven.
Exactly.
And if you were to like lay out like point by point like all the story beats and plot, you would be like, not much happens here, but it's about the details. It's about how they happen, not what happens. Okay, I'll start with what are the four characters, one of the four main characters. Wintrow, he's one of the younger characters. He was put into a priesthood when he was really young and really took to it. And he became a very pious kid. He's like very well learned, and then gets torn away from that at 15 to get trained to become the captain of the family's prized ship, the Vivacia. And he sucks at it and he hates it and he's miserable, and all he wants to do is to be a priest. And his story is about staying true to yourself, and despite changing environments and sometimes hostile environments, you need to find a way to adapt and still be true to yourself without like destroying your own identity. So that's a bit of a cliche.
Deep.
It's kind of deep, but it's kind of cliche and fantasy, weirdly enough.
Okay.
The thing is, the other main characters' themes in their stories are so thematically creative. Like, I've never seen the point of a story revolve around this theme. Let me give you an example. Althea, her story is about like the dangers of single-mindedness and stubbornness, and how sometimes your goals and aspirations are kind of dumb and you need to give up and shift your life.
Whoa.
It's kind of brutal because what her goal in life is, because she feels like she's entitled to become the captain of the famous family ship, and all she does. So
it was like set out for her.
It was like set out for her, yes. And then something changes, and she's no longer needed as like the captain of the ship, and all she wants to do is to prove herself, recapture the ship, and do all of this to prove herself. But the truth is that it's futile.
Exactly.
It's completely
She gets so close,
futile.
she's like, why am I doing this?
Exactly.
I don't even want it anymore.
The thing is, it's not as bitter as you might think. It absolutely is bitter in a lot of ways, and I really feel for her. But it's wrapped up in like a romance theme where she's kind of linked up with another main character, and it's beautiful.
I like that.
Yeah. A side note on that romance, which I love, is that there is another match that's kind of suggested for her by her family because it's politically very fruitful, and it checks a lot of boxes. And she even admits so. She's like, he's handsome, he's very kind, his family's rich, I actually quite like him, he's polite, like he's everything I want, but she just doesn't like him. You know, her heart isn't in it.
Right. On paper, it works.
Exactly. He ticks all the boxes.
Yeah.
It works.
But there's no magnetism.
There's no magnetism, and she goes against her family.
Yeah.
And I love it. It was honestly a great love story. Moving on to my favorite character, who's probably one of my top 5 favorite characters of all time. What's awesome about her is that she's a 13-year-old girl that Oh my God, where do you even start? She's
You're
really
gushing.
shrewd and clever and conniving.
Okay.
And consistently underestimated by her family and kind of infantilized. And she's so in a hurry to grow up and do adult things. All she wants to do is like, you know, the girly things, like put on like women's dresses and put on the nice makeup and go to balls and dance with the boys and stuff like that. But the truth is that she's also ridiculously immature and has the worst judgment possible. And so much, and she's not a passive character whatsoever. Okay. She creates chaos because she's an idiot. And like in reading a lot of reviews, people, especially in the first book, readers hate her because they're just like, this kid is the dumbest kid I've ever read in my life. Like, to give you an example, she's a 13-year-old girl that's like sneaking out at night and like seducing 15-year-old boys to give her money.
Why? Oh, because she needs money?
Yeah, because she needs money for her family.
Oh my.
But it ends up like just being incredibly like denigrating, and she gets barely any money. And her mom just takes it and goes like, what is this? Why do you give me like 50 cents? Like, this is not going to do anything for us, you know? But she's actually what starts a ton of the conflict in this book, weirdly enough. And ends up being a really central character.
Does he develop enough that people end up liking her? Like, you love her because of what she is as a character, but I'm talking about in the books.
In the first book, she's exactly what I described. Just an agent of chaos and really annoying, but kind of in a intriguing way because she's an absolute nuisance to her family.
Sure.
But her story is all about growing up in a hurry, like successfully, being thrown into situations where you need to mature very quickly in order to survive, and how that comes with a toll. Like, she gets what she wants. She becomes an adult with responsibilities, but she's also kind of resentful about it near the end. She gets put in situations where she really has to develop her skills as like a diplomat and a negotiator, and she does incredibly well at it. But it's so sad because what she expected out of adulthood is not what she got, and in such a short period of time she changed a lot, but in a way that you can tell that she doesn't really like what she became.
Interesting. Yeah, because I guess it's more of a pulling, like throwing out the line and then trying to reel it back in, which is difficult. Like, she's done a lot already.
Exactly. One more character I want to quickly touch on is Kenneth. He's one of the main villains in this story. But it's interesting because from an outsider's perspective, like he's a really good dude. Like, he goes around on his pirate ship and frees slaves and puts them onto islands and builds infrastructure and starts new communities. But the truth is, when you get his point of view, you understand that he's a master manipulator. And he's a gaslighter. And he doesn't free slaves because he thinks it's the right thing to do. He frees slaves because if you free a slave, they have nowhere else to go. And doesn't that make a very loyal pirate crew?
Oh, gosh.
Right? Like, so he's actually a horrible person. Like, the way you hear him talk about people, everyone is just a pawn. And
he's a business person.
He's a business person. Yeah, exactly. And you get the point of views from other characters talking about Ken, and just, they seem as like this almost like God figure.
I love when this happens. I love that. This is, I say, one of the best parts about having these multi-perspective stories, because you get to hear what other people think of a character, and you can get so highly influenced by that, but then you hear from the character and you're like, what? This is who you really are? Because you get it from their inside.
That's the beauty of multiple perspectives.
Exactly.
Well done, right?
Exactly.
Because there's really understandable misunderstandings. And this is like one of the characteristics.
Right, it works.
A few of the characteristics that I find in Robin Hobb's writing is that she puts in a lot of effort into making misunderstandings and conflict understandable from both points of view. And nobody is ever just like absolutely in the wrong. Even characters that kind of presented to be like the villains have like really good reasons to do things the way they do, right? Another thing about her writing that I love, which is I don't think a lot of people, I think a lot of people would find this annoying. Characters fail all the time. They don't succeed in like most of what they do. So it's like characters try to be very active and push the story along, but the truth is that sometimes what they're trying to do is incredibly difficult and it just doesn't work. Now, that sounds annoying, but to give you an example, like when I used to play Dungeons and Dragons, you know how outcomes in that game are reliant on dice rolls? If you get a 20, you succeed. If you get a 1, you don't. The best outcomes, like story-wise, were often when you fail. The funniest, like most interesting things happen when you fail. And I think she does this really well because it's not about the characters failing. It's about how they react to failure.
So you think that part of it is very intentional?
Very intentional. And this is something that I noticed in her previous series that I've read from her.
Wow.
Too. I'd like to touch on one thing really quickly too. The third book, which is the best in the series, gets dark really quickly in a way that surprised me because the first two are not like incredibly violent or depressing or anything like that, but the third one just got me, mostly because there is essay in here, which might be a trigger for some people, but the sexual assault isn't taken lightly. It actually ends up being a central pivotal point in the story that changes the fortunes of multiple people, and it takes an emotional toll on everybody, both the survivor and the person who committed it. It ends up being a really, really big deal. Just wanted to throw that out there. It's a really, really hard scene to read, though. Oh my god.
Yeah. Was it at the start of the last book or kind of through?
It was practically the climax of the book.
Okay.
Weirdly enough. Just to touch on a couple things that might irk people if you're going to read this book. It is a fantasy and there are fantastical elements. Like, for example, there are live ships, which are live sentient talking ships that have like the figurehead is like animated. Okay. And talks.
I'm tapping
out.
Like,
I hear your reaction. And this is why I'm bringing it up because the magic, the magic is a bit out there. It's not central to the story.
I'm glad you saved that till the end, Jacob. Really.
Yeah. Well, because if you do like a mind's eye thing, you try to picture it in your head, like what would this look like in a movie? You'd be like, that would look goofy as hell.
I'm not gonna lie. Through this entire review, you could have almost forgotten that this thing was fantasy, and then you're like, there's talking ships. Like, oh yeah, we're still talking fantasy here.
I think because it's really not central. It's really not central.
Sure.
It's cool. Like the ships themselves end up being great characters too. It's very strange. There's one ship that has like the personality of like a 12-year-old. It's hilarious.
Oh gosh, why didn't you bring up one of the ships as your favorite characters?
Because they're not.
Okay.
I'd argue that it's also a grimdark fantasy. Like I said earlier, fantasy fans love to subdivide everything. Because nobody's like a overwhelmingly good person from like a moralistic standpoint. But to get into positives before I wrap this up, she uses the setting really well. I learned so much about sailing. I know about how you navigate an old sailing ship, how you crew a sailing ship, how you manage the morale of your crew, the chain of command, the delicacies and intricacies of authority upon a ship. You know, there's the captain, the first mate, second mate, third mate, all the different roles on a ship, what you need to do to take care of a ship, all the different parts of a ship, the ballast, the sails, the steering wheel, the rudder, the figurehead. You know, I know a lot about this stuff now. It was, and she uses it to tell the story too. It's not just exposition.
Reading an article about these things, right?
Exactly. You know, things like how to store cargo properly ends up being like a central like plot point.
I mean, yeah, if she makes the mundane things interesting, then I can understand, you know, how well she will do at educating you on these aspects.
Yeah, exactly.
That's effective.
And this book has great moments, like the word moment in italics, because when you have so many points of views and so many established, well-developed characters, when they end up clashing, you have mixed feelings everywhere. And you cheer for characters that if they're going up against another character that you already like, it's like, how do I feel about this? This hurts. So for example, if there's like ship A, which has like 5 or 6 characters, some of which I like, some of which I don't like, and some of which I have mixed feelings on, is on a collision course to get in a battle with ship B, which has another set of characters that I love and characters that I hate. and characters I have mixed feelings on, I'm going to have strong emotions going into it. So like right before seeing exactly like the one I just described happen, I had to put the book down and be like, oh my God, this is going to be crazy.
Wow.
What's going to happen?
Like, not only is that aspect of it true, but the fact that she has really pulled you in to the characters, to every single character, to the book, the plot leading up to this, that you feel so strongly before it hits, like before the moment. As
you just
said.
have to respect the setup.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Exactly. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Well, you had me. You definitely had me with this book or series.
You got 90 hours to spare?
No, I just meant like it was a great conversation.
Oh, okay. I won't take it personally if you don't read it. That's okay.
That's good.
That's okay. I might read Normal People, though.
You should. Definitely. All you need is a weekend, all right? It's definitely not 90 hours.
All right. So you recommended
Normal People by Sally Rooney.
Sally Rooney, and I'm recommending the Liveship Traders series by Robin Hobb. That's Hobb. After the break, I'm going to be talking to Matt Agnew. It's his turn to be doing the rapid fire review, and he took some selections that I give 2 thumbs up, way up. This is AMI Audiobook Review. We'll be right back. Welcome back to AMI Audiobook Review. I'm Jacob Szymanski. Ramya still with us. Nufsina Abdelmajid is in the background. Let's do some rapid fire review. Our coworker, Matt Agnew, is next up. Matt, welcome.
Hello, thank you so much.
Are you familiar with rapid fire review?
I have heard a take or two, yes.
Okay, just to remind everybody of the
familiarize
rules.
yourself, huh?
Yes. To remind everyone of the rules, Matt provided us 5 titles, 5 of his most recent notable reads. We're going to go through them one by one. Matt, you have 15 seconds for each book to give us a synopsis/review. And then once we finish going through all 5 of them, you get to pick one of them to further elaborate on. Rant, rave, whatever you want to do. You have the platform. Sound good?
Oh, okay. Very good.
Okay, let's get started. I'm eager to get through these because you have some good selections. Let's go. First one, Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Okay, so this is all about terraforming and like bioengineering and kind of like evolutionary tampering, I guess. The writing was not bad, but the concepts were really imaginative. But I gotta warn you, if you're an arachnophobe, do not pick this up.
What? What do spiders have to do with terraforming?
What?
Well, you only gave me 15 seconds, so I guess we'll have to find out.
We may get back to this.
He's uber confident with this game. All right. Let's keep going. The next one on your list is The Cycle of Arawn by Edward W. Robertson.
That's right. It's one of my favorites. It's a high fantasy series starter. It's got lots of mages and knights and like gods and cults and things like that. But it's all cut with really witty buddy banter. The dialogue is amazing, great pacing, and there's more than 9 books, so it's amazing for binging. Oh my God, that was right on time.
More than 9 books. How much more than 9 books? How many more?
Kind of like a lot more. 9 is the first 2. So it starts with a trilogy, and then there's another, I don't know, like septrilogy. I don't know what the right word is. There's like another 7 after that. And then they did like another side series with another 3. So like there's tons of books. It's amazing.
So it's a whole expansive universe. It's like the MCU.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, next up, Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman.
Okay, I hate that I love this book, but it's my newest guilty pleasure. It's a lit RPG style, which means it reads like a book, but it kind of feels like a video game. It's absurdly over-the-top D&D/comedy style. It's both amazing and just absolutely terrible somehow at the same time.
That's such a good description.
Brilliant.
I've read this one before.
You've read this one? Okay.
I have. You have a perfect description. We're getting back to this. Okay?
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we do have to. I want to know what a guilty pleasure of this type feels like. All right. Familiar title to our very own Jacob Szymanski, The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch.
Okay, so this is one of the most highly recommended fantasy books I think ever. It's sort of like Ocean's 13 meets like Game of Thrones. It's like got street urchins and false gods, big heists, and long game deception. But one of the most fantastic single narrator characterizations.
Narrator characterizations.
Yeah, so it's like one narrator, but he does all the voices for like all the different characters. Does absolutely an amazing job. I don't know, Jacob, did I do it justice?
Did you listen to the Michael Page version? Is that who narrated it? Do you remember the name of the narrator?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
He was
It's
fantastic.
the one available on Audible.
Yeah, okay. I think that's the Michael Page one. He sounds very Shakespearean, right? Like it's
Yes,
very over the
yes.
top. It really fits the style, especially the dialogue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my favorite fantasy book of all time.
You guys cheat a
He
lot at
recommends it
your own
practically.
game. You know that. This is way longer than 15 seconds.
Yeah. No, we
Well,
we do break the rules often. And also, Jacob recommends this book like every week, so it would definitely be the highest recommended
For
fantasy.
absolutely good reason. If
Yeah.
you haven't already, you're a fantasy reader. You got to pick this one up.
it's a bit of a critical darling at this point. Like nobody ever talks crap about this book, and if you do, you will get eviscerated online, and I will join in. Okay.
getting deep.
Let's get to the next one. The last one is Heaven's River by Dennis E. Taylor.
Okay, so the basic plot of this one is like a 21st century software engineering nerd gets turned into a self-replicating von Neumann space probe. It's lighthearted but gripping space adventure, and it's an ongoing series. The narrator and the author both are absolutely amazing. Love this one.
How much did you prepare for this? How have all your responses been like picture
So
perfect?
clean.
Wow.
Excuse me, Jacob, how dare you ask? This is completely off the cuff. I
Break
have no
the
notes.
fourth
In that
wall
case,
for
take
us.
my
Come
job.
on.
How is someone that eloquent?
You've stolen his heart with all the fantasy picks. That's what's happening here.
Yes, honestly,
Okay.
when you sent us in these recommendations, I jumped for joy because you had two books that I've already read and loved.
Legit.
What do you want to further elaborate on out of these 5 books?
Oh boy. I mean, I kind of feel like it has to be Dungeon Crawler Carl. So this book I picked up on a whim because again, kind of like The Lives of Locke, Lamora, I was just kind of going through Reddit for some new reads that would kind of break me out of the ones I keep going back to. And I saw this one, and the first time I saw it come up, Dungeon Crawler Carl, I thought it sounded and looked like the most goofy book of all time. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I just can't. This is ridiculous. But it just kept coming up in every thread on every book subreddit or fantasy subreddit. It just kept coming up, and so I thought, okay, you know what? I'll spend a credit on it, and I'll just refund it. Like I probably won't like it. It looks absolutely stupid, but I'll just get my credit back if it's no good. In the first 15 minutes, that's what I thought. I was like, this is really dumb. But then, like minute 20, I was like, oh dang, okay. All right, I see where you're going with this. And then it just took off. And I binged the entire first book in the first 3 days. I had a couple days that I was in the wood shop, and I just had it running on repeat. And I immediately went out and bought the extra credits on Audible so I could get the next few in the series and just keep it going. I did the entire, I think there's 6 books out right now, and I just read them all back to back to back.
You have all 6. Wow, you
Yeah.
probably
Hold up.
devoured it.
I do a good binge. Yeah, absolutely.
This is the guilty pleasure one, right? I've lost track.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So 20 minutes, and then it just took off, you said. What happened?
It's a good question, Ramya. So I think it was my first exposure to this lit RPG style, which is funny that I would not naturally gravitate towards it because I do really enjoy video games, and I do enjoy RPG games, like role-playing games, things like Skyrim or Fallout or things like that. But there's a way of writing in these books that kind of makes it feel like you're leveling. The main character is leveling up, or they're getting new talents and skills and things like that, just like you would go through and proceed. A typical RPG video game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really weird book style for me. I've never read anything like that before, and it just didn't appeal to me off the bat. And I mean, Dungeon Crawler Carl as well. The idea of this book, the basic plot is aliens invade the world and turn the entire world into a D&D dungeon, right? And the humans have to level up to survive, kind of thing. And if they win, then they get control of the planet back.
And you win by killing everyone else, right?
Right. Yeah. There's every dungeon level, like
Yeah.
there's fewer and fewer survivors. And when they start out, they are really trying to, they have their humanity and they're really trying to do the right thing. But like, as you get deeper in the dungeon, people's morals start breaking down. And anyway, and then after a little while, like once I warmed up to the lit RPG style. The plot and the characters had kind of hit their stride by that point, and I had sort of come to accept the egregiously over the top writing style, and I just got hooked. So.
And the narration is awesome by Jeff Hayes. He does the voices for all the characters. The way he voices Carl, the titular character, is so funny because he has a sort of like frat bro with a vague Southern accent. He sounds kind of dumb. It's really
That's a good
funny.
way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other cool thing about this book as well is that it's because it's so popular. There's a dramatized version available with a full casting. It's not available through Audible, and maybe Jacob, you can help me out. I can't remember the name of the developer at the moment, but there is an entire of the first book, at least I know, an entire casted dramatized version of this book, which I'm also excited to check out.
Awesome.
Okay, well,
I'm sure you could do really well
to put in the description.
Yeah, please do. We'll include that for sure. In Lies of Locke Lamora, all the characters are horrible people that have absolutely no morals, and they just have no quarrels from stealing from people and screwing people over. Did that get to you at all, and did you find it endearing in the way that I did? Because this book makes you feel like a degenerate.
This book makes you feel like a degenerate. What a tagline.
For liking it, yes.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah, I did definitely get that same effect. I think it's something about the way that they bring you into the cult of that. I think it's the 13th god or something, right? The patron saint of thieves and luck. They sort of bring you into the family, and it makes you kind of feel like one of them. It does really well in making you sort of root for the bad guy, I think.
Yes.
Which you do see in other books and movies and things like that. Like if you take a big step back and realize it's just because it's the main character that you're rooting for them, but you take a step back and you realize like, well, you're not really that good of a person, you know. Like I don't really know why I want you to win here, but yeah, no, I definitely got that effect from it as well.
And it's like a group of kids, of like 5 or 6 kids that get raised by this one dude who pretends to be blind so that he can get donations from people. He like scams people by pretending to be blind because he's a jerk. Like I said, nobody is a good person here. But these 6 kids and the blind guy, they don't pretend that they do it because like they have no other option or because they had a hard life or that society's unfair. They're just open about it. They just say like, because it's heaps of fun. I just love doing it. It's the best thing ever. They don't really need to do it. It's just like it's an awesome lifestyle for them and they love it. And they're so
certainly
good
not
at it.
after a certain point, right? Like it's perhaps in the beginning it's because of desperation, but after, you know, you kind of hit the middle of the book, it's like, okay, you're doing pretty well for yourself by now.
They have a vault.
You could easily quit while you're ahead, you know. Yeah, they have a whole vault with all of their takings and
just like millions.
And they really just use it to invest in future crime, right?
Yeah, basically. They have no reason to do this. But no, the plot of the book is basically that while they're doing very well successfully in the underworld of Camor, which is a city that takes place in, there's another new sinister character that's kind of come and taken over, and he kind of threatens the entire like stability of not just the underworld of Camor, but like the whole of it. Okay, terraforming and arachnids. Let's talk about it. How do those two things come together?
You have a minute.
Okay, well, I can tell you this without giving away too much of the plot because it all takes place very early on in the book. So the idea is that humans have advanced their bioengineering to the point where they're essentially able to play God with evolution, and geneticists have engineered this virus that essentially will speed monkeys on the way to evolution, and so the lead bioengineer sort of goes on this space journey to a terraformed world that's been sort of pre-readied for humanity's arrival, and she's sent down monkeys and preceded it with a lot of the familiar life from planet Earth, and with the idea that she will send down this virus that will favor monkeys and sort of bring them into an elevated sentience. But unfortunately, there's a big battle and something explodes. And long story short, the monkeys don't make it, but the spiders are compatible with the virus. and so spiders are elevated to sentience
Oh,
instead of
no.
monkeys. And so it's like
God.
sort of this parallel evolutionary journey where like there's, you know, they become evolved, but because they're a very different life form than we are, or the monkeys would be, you know, it really takes a different tack. And there's a lot of really interesting imaginative exploration of like, you know, what if arachnids had the benefit of evolution instead of, you know, bipedals or some such, you know.
Matt, thank you so much. We're going to include all of your RFR selections in the podcast description for anybody who's interested. But thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, that's all the time we have. If you want to leave us any feedback, you can do so by calling us at 1-866-509-4545, or you can leave us an email at feedback@ami.ca. I'm Jacob Szymanski with Ramya Nisino Dalmajiru is our technical producer, and our guest was our coworker, Matt Agnew. Thanks for listening.